this meeting, board meeting. Christina, would you call the roll, please?
Brad Chance, Anthony Jeremita, Greg McGee,
Here.
Steve McLucky,
Present.
Michael Talcott,
Here.
Les Boatright.
Here. Whoa. Thank you. I got a couple things here. One, I want to recognize our new board member, Greg McGee. Anytime you talk, just slide the mic over so that they can pick you up on the streaming service. We'd appreciate that. Glad to have you on board. Some meetings are going to be like awe-inspiring. Some of them are going to be like watching paint dry. So on average, it works out pretty good. We've got two members out of town on the panel today. Anthony Jeremita and Brad Chance are indisposed, couldn't be here. But I want to make this comment here. If anybody of the four of us leave, then we don't have a quorum, so we can't vote on anything. So if you have to step out of the room for something like take a phone call, make sure you come back, please, so we can vote on things if we have anything to vote on. We just want to make sure we have a quorum. And as far as membership goes, I believe we're still one short of maximum. Is that correct? Yeah. So, but we appreciate Greg willing to serve and being on the committee. Thank you. Okay, well, let's start off then. The first item on the reports is for finance and admin. And you've got in your packet the July utility financial reports. Are there any questions on any of this? I'm looking forward to meeting the new finance person or whoever comes, for some of this information to kind of get feedback. I know that our books close July 31st, and then we true them up. Is it November?
So old process of closing the books would have been November. With the live system and everything, they're not, I don't know that they're truly closed for still a few months yet, but
Okay.
These would be the report out numbers. And then of course, once we produce the annual comprehensive audited financial, we can provide you a copy of that as well.
Yeah, I think I'd like to make sure that, we see what it closed in July, we'll say, for the year, and then go back and take a look at the financials, the numbers for the trued up numbers that when that all closed. I think, we haven't done that in the past, but I think it would be good to see, make sure nothing major has changed that we missed.
Yep, we can make that happen.
Okay. Go. Yeah, those things they're on.
Just a quick question. I know in the DKMT study that they recommended one of the fundamentals for us was to work toward getting a financial analyst and succession people on board for just IPL specifically. Have we had any movement toward that?
Yeah, I specifically have had discussions with city leadership and was probably going to, I don't want to say slow roll that, but try to plan more accordingly, get that into the budget and everything, and have kind of been given direction that it's really important, right? And it is to get our financials in order and understand really where we are and be able to provide the transparency that I think everybody's looking for. So we will be looking to hire a financial manager and a finance analyst sooner rather than later. So I'm in the process of making that happen.
Just for
to
IPL?
Get it. For IPL, yes, sir.
Okay.
Great. Any other questions on financials? Anything you all want to make a comment on?
I would just say, and Christina, I'm just asking real quick. So the report that's actually attached has the ending in August finances. So you guys don't see that, but right now it shows that IPL is $3 million to the good. You guys know we operate as a nonprofit and we try to break even each year. The $3 million to the good, it probably looks that way because our budget kind of flattens our revenues through the year. But as you know, July, August, September, the hot months, right, we draw in more revenues. And then when you hit October, November, those revenues kind of drop down. So I expect to see those kind of even out back closer to budget here over the next couple of months as we have temperatures like today where people aren't running air conditioners.
Have you been seeing a big change in the, LIHEAP funds or anything, more people drawing on that?
Well, I mean, LIHEAP and those different funds are really administered by the Community Services League, a lot of those.
But I didn't know if you were
So,
seeing any more of that.
They spend all the dollars we give them every year, If I gave them more dollars, they would absolutely spend it, and we've had discussions of following the DKMT reports. I'd like to relook at all those programs. A lot of those have been around since the 80s and 90s. So I really think we need to, as a group, look at those programs and decide, are we really meeting what those were set out to meet at the beginning, and put some goals around there. That was one of the DKMT reports as well, right, is to kind of put some KPIs to those. Man, these mics are hot, aren't they?
They are.
Put some KPIs around there and make sure that we're meeting the actual requirements of those programs.
Yeah, I think on some of this stuff, it would almost be nice to do a scorecard with the key performance indicators, like you say, where we can kind of take at a glance and look, are we meeting, what we've set out and what we projected we were gonna do, like on budget and different things, so. I think it's, that's the ultimate to kind of get to, but it doesn't hurt to start talking about it. Anything, Lisa, from your side of the business, anything on the budget?
No, nothing on the budget. If you're looking at the financial reports and you see, like specifically for both water and sewer, supplies are already at 31 or 38% of the budget for the year, don't be alarmed. We pull annual blanket POs and encumber that money first thing. So it's not that we're going to be in the hole here a couple months in. Just when you see that, that's why we make big full year purchases early in the fiscal year. Otherwise, nothing specifically related to budget, though. Just for the board's information, the sanitary utility is in the midst of a cost of service study, which, as you know, has been part of our CIP and a planned project for the last couple years. It's finally happening. Burns & Mack is the contractor performing that work, and we expect to see those results completed in January or February, and of course that would be coming to you for review.
Okay. Any questions on the financials? Okay, thank you. IPL, you handed out this presentation that you gave on AMI.
Yes, so the presentation that I handed out really is the exact presentation that I performed at the study session at council about 4 weeks ago. So it's a very, very high level, and I think that's kind of what you asked for, was just a high level discussion and a point for any questions on AMI. I can go through it if you want, but AMI is advanced metering infrastructure, and we have to remember that it's more than just meters on the side of your house. There's a whole communications, backbone that supports it, as well as software back at the utility that helps gather all that information, put it all together, and then put it into bills. And also usually an interface for customers as well to be able to view maybe more of a real-time type of scenario for your usage as you're going through the month, help you determine where your bill's at. And then it also directly aligns with lots of customer benefits and programs that can follow once that's installed. This was really spelled out multiple times during the DKMT report that this is a base technology that's present in over 80% of homes nowadays. And really you have to, it's the base for, again, all kinds of programs that favor both the utility and definitely the customers.
I know people, in the past have gotten upset about AMI. If they have Aspire Gas, those meters are AMI, and they don't even know it. They're a for-profit company, so they just went ahead and put them all on. And I don't even think people realize that. They say, I don't want anything reading anything at my house. Well, they've already got it. So this is just a different service, and their AMI could not be made to read our AMI because it's two different companies. I know some people say, well, why can't you just use the same system? It would be nice, but you can't do that. So I'm going to open it up here to questions from the group. I know Michael's got his notebook questions, so I'll turn it over to you.
Well, make sure everybody's.
I don't think so.
Okay. And I really do want this to be a discussion.
Okay.
These are questions that I have, and it kind of backs from the first time that they were going to go through with it, and then this time, because I think, and I said this to Heather when she talked to us about the the report. And because part of what my concern is that, first off, help me understand why we're already doing RFPs and doing all that before we kind of get our fundamental stuff like our analyst and all of that taken care of. And it's just, yeah.
Yeah, so I guess, for one, I don't have the RFP out, right? And the discussion is around,
Okay.
let's get a team together, let's discuss the business needs and what we're looking for, how we want to execute it,
Okay.
and then go forward with an RFP. Over the next 6 months, I imagine, we'll move forward with an RFP process.
Okay.
And so, yeah, this isn't going to come out next week and be decided on in a month. This is a
Right.
long process, and we need to have more discussions about how we want to approach it and make sure we do it right and we communicate it correctly. Lots of also public forums where I want to be able to communicate and educate the public on what this can and can't do for them and what it does and doesn't do, right? Because I think there's just a lot of misinformation as well as information out there on AMI. I've heard people within our city say, well, I don't want you controlling my thermostat. Well, AMI has nothing to do with your thermostat, right? So there's a lot of education that needs to happen out in the public, I believe. So,
Well, I think
It's a
where
long
that,
process.
where that comes from, because the potential is there. You know, people, if they have the right infrastructure, they can do that. I think, you know, if they've got the right thermostat. and they've
there is no company that controls your thermostat that you haven't given permission to the utility to do that. Again, that's a customer program down
So
the
that-
road in the future, and it's not part of this AMI project.
So that has to be, the person actually has to. allow you
Absolutely.
permission. Good, okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. Now, the one thing from the last time that AMI was tried, there were 6,000 to 7,000 people that actually signed petitions because they didn't want it. And part of what, again, I'm trying to advocate for the ratepayers. That's what I feel like part of my job is. And so some of those, some of those are, number one, I have never had a presentation that I've been in, that I've sat in on with AMI where they've ever said anything negative about it. There, and I think along with the DKMT telling us that we need to be more transparent, and I appreciate what you're saying. We're going to educate the people, and we need to make sure that that's done. But not once have I ever heard anybody in any conversation talk about any of the negatives. And I think as part of the process, I think those need to be brought up, legitimate ones, legitimate negative problems, that so that everybody is fully educated on it. I mean, both pro and con. And that's not a bad thing. I think it becomes a bad thing when negatives aren't discussed or the cons of something aren't discussed, because nothing's ever 100% all good. And I think that just makes part of the process more legitimate when we are more transparent about both sides. And again, 6,000 to 7,000 people, there were a lot of issues, including health issues, that people had concerns about. So that's all. That's the only reason I'm asking some of this.
And I have no problem discussing those further down the road, right? Because there are Institute of Cancer research studies done on AMI and done with cell phones, right? So we can honestly have those conversations and pull out reports and talk about those. Absolutely.
Okay, so then I can probably shorten this down a lot if I know that this is gonna be a thing that we can actually have a back and forth discussion planning this, or if it's, as long as it's not gonna be okay, we're just gonna put this through and that's it. If we can have an open discussion, I'm totally happy with that, because like I said, I got a lot of research that I've done, and I want to make sure that stuff's addressed too.
Well, let me be clear. I think I need to move forward with the project. but the details of the projects are what we need to talk. So I was already during that study session asked, are we gonna allow people to opt out? Well, I don't know, we haven't got there yet. Let's have those
Right.
discussions on what does that look like, right? Because
Right.
maybe that makes sense in some circumstances and maybe it doesn't in others, right? So, when we have, again, one of the top reasons I wanna institute this program is for employee safety. We have people in yards that are getting hurt, getting threatened.
Mhm.
If you're a hostile customer that's been threatening my employees, I don't believe you should have the option to opt out of AMI. I want to get my guy out of your yard and have him in there as little as possible. So that's just one scenario, and I think we just need to have more conversations about what does an opt-out program look like if we're going to institute that. We will have some cost savings loss if we institute that, right? That's because we'll have to keep around a certain number of meter readers on top that do the manual reading at this point in time and driving around town. And also, I won't know if your electricity's out, so now I've got to keep dispatchers to answer phones for outages where AMI, I would know you're out, right? So there's a whole host of things that I think I'm open to realistic conversations about,
Mhm.
and I'm not headed down one path or another, but let's talk about those and what does that program look like.
Right, and I fully acknowledge that we know now that this is just gonna be a thing, so I acknowledge that. So it's not like I wanna be, I'm not trying to be confrontational.
No, I
Like,
understand.
yeah, adversarial, thank you.
You're welcome.
You know, usually my wife does that. So,
Right, don't get
finishes
fresh.
my, no, I know. I know. So anyway, no, I get that, but I want to make sure that the people that have concerns, the people, that there's something there for them. Because we worked on an opt-out the last time, and actually my wife was working with one of the past council members. But once it was all said and done, two things that came up. The company that they were going to use didn't allow for an analog opt-out. And the other thing was he was making it so punitive that almost nobody could even qualify for an opt-out. So that's one big thing that I think we need to have in the discussion is with an opt-out for the people for health reasons or whatever they have their issues or concerns, that's looked at. But I really do think we need a true analog opt-out. And I'm just going to skip.
So can I ask
Yeah.
can I ask a question? And again, I'm not trying to be confrontational the other way, but
Right.
when you say it was so punitive, and I haven't seen the numbers from the last time, but
Right.
in the interest of protecting the ratepayers,
Mhm.
if it's a non-cost savings for me, that means that I'm keeping some cost that has to be covered somehow
Right.
without all the ratepayers who decided they wanted to go to AMI covering that, right? Because then you're subsidizing those people who
Right.
opted out by the rest of the ratepayers who said, I want a cost savings for my utility.
Part of the punitive was if you have a dog deemed that's been deemed dangerous, or there were little things. I'm not talking about just money.
Mhm.
I'm talking about things that would disqualify you, like being late on your bill one time, or it was literally that punitive. So that's what I'm talking about as far as punitive stuff. I know we can discuss the monetary end of it,
I understand what you're saying now.
but also the one thing I do think we had our gate accidentally got locked because we've had some theft in our neighborhood. So we accidentally left it locked. The meter reader, they came by about 4 days later than they usually do. So we ended up locking the thing again. Well, he left a card for us to read. And so actually, I just snapped a picture of the meter, emailed it right to the meter department, and it was taken care of. So that's what I'm thinking, why wouldn't that be something that, as part of that, I'm just throwing that out there, because then you wouldn't have to physically have somebody come and read it for the opt-out people. You just, you do that, and then you save the safety of the meter reader, and it doesn't cost you anything more for that part. So that's just something that I want to throw out. And actually, you know what, since we're gonna have more discussions, and this isn't even in the works real
The
quick.
purpose of the study session was really just to reintroduce AMI from a very, very high level. And since it was talked about, I mean, it was like 20 plus times in the DKMT report, right?
Right,
It was to just break open the ground of the conversation again, and let's get started
right.
with talking about this again, because I firmly believe it's a path we need to go down for the utility to move into to new technologies and be able to take advantage of programs that are available for residents. And it was just, let's get the conversation started again,
Okay.
and then let's go away, let's have some deep underground conversations about what this program's gonna look like, and redo costs, right? An RFP, understand costs, so we can do the cost benefit analysis and understand the business plan and go down the road again. But
Okay.
it's a ways from spending $1 on it.
And that's fine. That's all, that was my big thing, because when you gave the presentation, it sounded like, okay, let's get permission to go ahead and throw out some RFPs and start getting those out there. Well, when I hear let's get those out there, sometimes it sounds like, oh, we're gonna start doing this month. We're gonna get this going. So that's all I wanted to make sure, that if we have time for discussions before all the particulars are done, my big thing is an opt-out for the people. And I'm gonna end with this, because now that I know we can have some more discussion with the health aspect, and I know that seemed to be like one of the dead horses that got beat. And the health department said, no, we can't, there's nothing to do with that. Well, the FCC for 25 years was basing their recommendations on thermal burns from RF. And so finally, the Child Health Defense Group sued the FCC, and they won. And what that said is it forced the FCC to start looking at the new data that's been out there, all the new studies, all the health studies, all the leading to increase in cancer, and that's not talking about just AMI, but it's talking about, we got 5G, we got all this stuff just inundating us. And so it's forcing the FCC to now start looking at the non-thermal dangers of it, as opposed to just strictly, well, we're going by the FCC and the metering companies. We're just going by the FCC, and the FCC says that they're totally safe. Well, there's not even been any scientific studies that say how much is safe. So that's a big reason that I want to make sure that we at least have a discussion about a true analog opt-out for the people that are concerned about the health aspects, and which also include, they found the increase in heart disease and the increase in autoimmune disease. There's a lot of things, and I've got all the stuff. So those are my big concerns, and I'm just going to leave out the rest of it, because that can wait until we start having more discussions as we get close. But my big thing is the health aspect and the opt-out, that we make sure that gets in there. But I got a lot more, and I'm just not gonna go with that right now. We can wait on that till next month.
Okay.
Or when we get together. I would like to volunteer to work with whoever on an opt-out, though, so we at least get that out there, that I'm willing to do that. And when we start putting that together.
Okay. Anything else on the AMI topic? Anything else from IPL? Good, okay. Assistant City Manager, Grand Puab.
So you want an update on the landmark facility? The crane is in place, the roof replacement is happening right now. The design plans for the renovation are at 95%. We just reviewed those on Wednesday this week. And the RFQ for the construction manager is on the street. So things are moving along. All of the departments have obviously at 95% drawings, signed, sealed on their pieces. So just waiting to get the results. We did have a pre-bid meeting for the construction manager today, had some really, really good interest. So more than 50 people showed up. All the major players in the construction world were represented. So we expect a really solid response on that work. Looking forward to that closing here in another couple weeks.
I know at one time there was an interest of the PUAB to go do a tour of the building.
And I'm happy if we could actually have our next meeting there, if you had an interest in doing that and tour is part of it.
All right, that sounds good to us.
Okay, we'll do it. We can't stream there yet. We could set up a camera and record.
Yeah, and then put it out later.
So, or we can finish the meeting here and then,
Yeah,
Run down the
Maybe we
street.
do the meeting here and then adjourn to go do that or something.
sure.
Yeah, I think that's good while everybody's together, so.
Yeah.
You might explain for our new member kind of what we're talking about, because I'm sure walking in the middle of it, he's like,
What are you talking about?
Yeah,
All the
what?
acronyms and all the things. Yes. So we're going to relocate all the administrative functions in City Hall and also all of the current residents of this building to that facility. So it becomes true one-stop shop for all permitting, plan review, engineering, food handler permits, pick a thing. But for actual council meetings, you will go there.
Okay.
And we expect to start moving in late spring next year.
that'll be an interesting time.
It will indeed.
With all that road construction going on.
Yes.
Just a question, what would this building be then?
So this building, actually, and again, there's a lot of geobond work and things, planning, but the intent is that police headquarters would relocate to here, and an addition would be added on going that way to include municipal court and the detention facility, and ultimately all of these satellite pieces and operations of PD, but for their substations that would remain where they are, would be co-located here.
Thanks.
I know at one time there was concern about the detention center being too close to the schools.
So there's no state regulation that prohibits that. And especially as not a jail, it's just a holding facility. So I think there's a zoning change that we would have to do from, take to the planning commission and run that through council. But there's no formal law that would prohibit the location.
All right, good. The other thing I had on my sheet here, and I know it came up with some discussion, I think Anthony Jeremita asked about the mutual aid. I've been hearing talk about, they had all the hurricanes, and we didn't send anybody down to help, and it upset some people, and yada, yada, yada. So you might just talk a little bit about the mutual aid and what requests we got and why we didn't send, or.
So MPUA issued a request for help to see if anyone was able to participate this time. The initial response was that we weren't sending anybody for the initial storm. Several factors play into that. The one that's probably been talked about the most is just the long-term cost associated with paying. So in an emergency, yes, the city gets reimbursed for time worked and their food and their meals and things while they're there. What the city doesn't get reimbursed for is the long-term loggers cost associated with all of the overtime that is accrued while they're on those trips. So, for example, and this is something that Zach had put out to council and also spoke about at a recent council meeting in answer to the same question, but basically sending one person to on one of these events for a fairly short-term stay was effectively, in the lifetime loggers benefit, an increase of almost $60,000 that the city would bear.
So they were on the hook for the 60,
the city
All the
is-
other costs were covered, yeah.
Yes. So again, really, it's not about the overtime pay upfront or the salary that is reimbursed through FEMA. It takes some time, but we do get it back. It's just that, you know, looking to the future and controlling long-term costs, and then of course that is an IPL borne cost, right? So all those costs then directly affect rates and things like that too. So just looking really, truly, what does that cost over time? I can tell you that since that initial no to the first request came through, Zach, me, Joe, and Chad McGregor sat down and had a chat about it and about these long-term costs and things and what can we do. So we have a meeting scheduled with loggers to talk about any other potential options. And we did contact MPUA to volunteer one crew. All the needs were met, so there wasn't a need for our crew at the time. We are still on standby to go and assist if needed to send one crew. So that's kind of where we're at right
Is that normally
now.
what we would send, usually is 1 or 2 crews on a mutual aid request? Have we ever done bigger contingents? I mean, we don't have like.
I don't know the answer about bigger. I think 2 crews is usually the maximum, because we also don't want to take away from the service that we need to
Yep.
provide here within the city, right?
Yep.
So you don't want to extend yourself beyond what you could reasonably let go. So 1 crew is probably more typical to if we're in a situation where it looks like we're going to be okay for a while and it's maybe a really close short ask, right? So sometimes if it's a city within Missouri, that if something did happen back here, I could call that crew back and they'd be within the night, you know, or a couple hours. I think we've sent 2 crews at that point in time.
I know at KCPL, we had a 2-day window. They couldn't go any more than 2 days away until tropical storm, Hurricane Sandy, whatever you want to call it, happened. And then that was all out the window because everybody went from everywhere. But I can see, you know, if we only send 1 or 2 crews, but if other utilities send the same amount, you do a few of those, you've got a pretty large contingent to go wherever it is. But I'd heard rumors about some of the linemen quit because they weren't getting the call outs and things like that. Is that rumor true?
We've had a couple quit, but honestly, and Joe could probably speak to this more, it's back in 21, right? We saw something similar where contractors are just paying ungodly rates to pay, and so they're following the money.
Well, some of the contractors too, in their contract, they don't have a 16-hour max or 24. It's
Correct.
open-ended, and you'll get these guys working 80 hours straight, which is unsafe.
And it's,
and
oh, by the way,
unhealthy.
here's a truck and yeah,
Exactly.
all the things. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I think you've seen a fluctuation in need by contractors for linemen. We started filling back up our lineman ranks probably 1.5 to 2 years ago when contractors started laying off people because project funding started drying up. Well, now project funding and transmission projects are
Kicking back.
getting funded again, a lot of IRA money, right? A lot of government money coming. So contractors are willing to pay pretty high wages on top of per diems and other benefits that they can provide.
Yeah.
And you're seeing a shortage of linemen within the power industry again.
Any other? Yeah, Michael.
Yeah, I did want, if you could help me understand, one thing that Zach talked about at the council meeting when he was talking about that, when he addressed that, he said that we're trying to keep rates down. So I don't understand how them going and getting reimbursed for things, where that comes in, where the rates would be affected.
well, like I said, so it's long-term costs. So if the city for a 1-week stint is a $60,000 increase to loggers benefit, the city pays that loggers benefit. So those benefits on the utility side come from the utility fund. It's not a general fund cost, it's a utility cost. So those costs go into our cost of service studies to determine rates. So if those costs are escalating, that's a higher cost that goes into a cost of service study that requires a higher rate to cover.
Okay, and then the second thing, my understanding was that with loggers, it's your high 3 consecutive in your last 10 years. So if somebody's going down there, how does that affect us with loggers with the overtime, if they're concerned about racking up overtime, if it doesn't affect that, like that padding of your retirement, how does that affect that?
Well, it could very well be in their last
Okay.
10 years.
Right,
So,
but not, we got a lot of young people too that are there way under 20.
but it's also seniority
It's already
driven.
Seniority
Yeah.
based.
So-
You get a lot of senior guys that will take
Okay,
it.
yeah. Okay.
That's where that comes.
Yeah,
into play.
all the-
They're-
all
and
the
they're more
call-outs.
expensive ones.
All the call outs for the utilities are with the represented staff. Those are all seniority
A
based.
lot of them won't take the overtime if they get called to work in town, but if they get one to go out of town, they're all over it.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions about that? Anything else to share with the group? I see we have an interim deputy director.
Yeah, I guess I should have introduced him.
I guess.
I apologize.
Hi, Joe.
How you doing? So this is Ricky Diargon. He is, the interim deputy director. He came to us. He's got a lot of experience from multiple municipal agencies as well as a couple of IRAs or IOUs. But Ricky, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Sure, yeah, thank you. That's nice to formally meet you all. I've been at a meeting or two before, so yeah, I'm excited about the opportunity. A current system operations manager leading that unit, and like Joe said, I kind of bring a lot of experience and very familiar with a lot of the topics that we're talking about, in particular AMI. Been at several utilities that have rolled out AMI and had to go through a lot of these discussions and community outreach and scientific evaluations of health aspects of the meters, things like that. And so hopefully I can lend some experience and appreciate the opportunity to work with you all.
We're looking forward to it too.
Thank you all.
One more question on AMI. I just forgot what the question was. You can't fill it in for me, honey?
Sorry.
I'm sorry. What was my question? Will AMI need to go to a vote of the citizenry in order to implement it? Or can IPL just say we're going to do it? I'm curious. I know before I thought it went to a vote.
It went to a vote of council.
Okay.
It would just be the same as
Okay.
awarding any other contract at that point.
Okay, all right.
Considered a major capital project, right?
Yeah, okay. That's kind of what I thought, but I just wanted to make sure that there wasn't something somewhere that says, no, we had to do that. Because it was a large enough dollar amount or whatever. Okay, anything else from staff? Mr. Fears, anything you'd like to impart on us?
Welcome to Greg and Ricky. Although I was wearing a Broncos sweater, so I'm a little worried about that, but anyway.
We can edit.
I could resist.
We can edit
It's
that
not
out.
appropriate attire for meetings.
Put the black tape over
But, sorry. Joe did make the presentation to the council on AMI. Well, it was, like he said, just a real high-level presentation from our standpoint. Lots of pieces to happen before we ever get to where we're making, decisions. And there'll be lots of opportunity for public input as well. I think the council's committed to that. So just would, share that piece of the puzzle. Just to make sure you're clear on the mutual aid piece. For the increase, the estimated increase, I had asked Zach to do some number crunching, and he delegated that accordingly. But actual increase in lifetime benefit estimated for a lineman is about $64,000. And
That's
so-
over a week if they go out of town or.
right. And so you multiply that out times multiple people, and you get to around 300,000 pretty quick. And, and that's, starts adding up pretty quick on I mean, depending on how many events you have and things of that nature. So those are kind of some actual numbers based on what Zach was able to pull together for me. So I just passed that along. I think, that's pretty much what I had. There's lots, I think the council's continuing to digest the DKMT study. I think that we have discussions about that off and on. We had conversation with Joe a little bit about the process, and RFP might lead to potentially, give us some cost benefit analysis information to then move towards the RFQ or something to that effect. Who knows exactly what that process will be, but at least it's, I think it's down the road several months, and so I think we're committed to doing that right and doing that well. So I don't really think I have anything else. Just thanks to everyone for being here, and appreciate the discussion.
Did we want to ask about some governance ideas, or at least have them start thinking about governance ideas?
Well, we can.
They're working on them? Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, there is kind of a discussion, that we've kicked around, at least in a general way, about, what do we do relative to governance in the long run and how that might work. And there's no even direction, I think, at this point, but other than to say that it's worth looking at that whole topic and how we can best, represent the citizens of Independence for, and best govern our utilities. And I think what's not, my thought being, at least, is it's not just governance of IPL, but it's governance of the utilities as a whole. That probably makes sense to put all that in one basket, from my perspective. But, again, we're so early in that process that I don't even know what that means yet. So
I know from the PUAB perspective, we'd like to be involved in those discussions.
Sure.
The DMKT study said we weren't being utilized enough. So I was gonna throw out there on the DMKT, looking at the governance structure or the AMI, anywhere you can use us, member or members, please include us in those discussions, because we have a lot of input. And it will be a good education piece for some of us too, to be involved in that, to see it kind of how it all works from beginning to end. I think it will alleviate some questions. Yes, sir.
I wanted to suggest that we look into governance.
Oh, I've got a note here that
Yeah.
what I would like to do, and we're not to that point yet, but just talk about what we can do as far as coming up with our thoughts on governance.
Right.
Well, Mr. Pierce, thank you very much for being here.
you bet. Sorry I wasn't able to be here last month. I was out of town in the city.
We missed you.
Yeah, I was going to, but he didn't tell me that. Okay, so we're down to board member comments. I'll start to my right. Any
Okay,
comments?
just back to the governance and taking a look at that. If you, I don't know, however you want to do that, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, thanks. Make you in charge of it.
We could have a committee that comes back to the whole, we could discuss it, but I think that if you look back at DKMT, that was a big.
It was a
part of
big
it.
one, a big one.
Um,
Yeah, and I'd like to do some type of I have down here a note for some kind of a planning session, to really discuss it. Not being on camera is probably not the best way to really talk about it amongst ourselves, and it may be we do a smaller group, come back to the rest of us and
Yeah.
say, here's what we think. So I'll get that note out there, and we'll have it sent out. Christina I'll work with her on an email to everybody to see who wants to serve on that little group to put this together.
Great. And then I have one other question. Looking at the city charter, it's a great way, right before you go to bed, you just get out the charter and read. It says that the PUAB shall report its findings and recommendations at least annually to the council. I'm wondering if anyone in this room knows the last time there was an annual report. If there are past annual reports, could we get copies of them to kind of guide in And I think we need to start following the charter and probably should do an annual report.
I think about 2 years ago, I brought that very point up that we hadn't done it, and then we kind of forgot about it. But I think it's a valid point. It's in the charter. It's not been changed. And we need to do something, even if it's a one-page summary of the stuff we've worked on and stuff, to start following what we're supposed to do in the charter.
A process that might be an easy place to start would be similar to the oversight committees for the special sales taxes. They do a semi-annual report to council. It's included on the agendas and an information only. So at a bare minimum, that'd probably be an easy, create your summary and we can begin by attaching it even with those or with one of them. Those go in April and October every year, or if you want to do a year end, however you
We may
prefer.
just do
But
a year end and put it out in January or something,
But
just so
we-
we can meet the requirement of what that is.
yeah, but we do have that model already in place, so that might be, like I said, just a
Those are
starting spot.
actually in Monday's agenda, at the end of Monday's agenda.
Yeah, I don't think we'll have it ready by then.
No, I'm just saying, I'm saying the ones for the other ones are,
Yeah.
if you want to look at those, just to
Okay.
get an idea as to what's.
Yeah, I'm familiar with it
they
from the
look like.
stormwater piece,
Yeah.
but I think putting together some type of a summary like that on an annual basis, at least the things we've discussed, you know, I think would be a good way just to remind everybody that we're still here and here are the types of things that we've worked on, maybe some things we'd like to work on too. Kind of put that out there in the universe. All right, anything else?
That's it, thank you.
I told him to quit reading the charter. Down this end? Okay, I pretty much said what I had about the governance structure. You've talked a little bit about that. I want to make sure we're involved in that. So from our perspective, be thinking about ways on the governance structure you'd like to see it move forward. You might provide our newest member with a copy of the governance structure piece you presented to us. There's a high-level look at the
Probably be
governance structures.
Good, just to get them the whole overview of the DKMT
Yeah.
study, so
And that would be good too.
alphabet soup makes sense, and
Yeah.
you can catch up on, some
Yeah,
of the
we-
recommendations.
There were 2 studies that were done that we saw in July and August. One was looking at just numbers of IPL, you know, they were looking at, do we sell it, do we keep it, what the numbers say. Then the other one was a long-term look. And one of the things that came out of that was the governance structure. Instead of having the PUAB the way we are now, just kind of an ad hoc committee, actually coming up with a governance team that oversees the operation and makes decisions, takes it out of the council's hands. They're still there, but this board or whatever you want to call it would be governing the utilities. And other utilities are doing it. It's working well. I think it makes a lot of sense to do it that way. PUAB would still be here for the other parts of the utilities, the water and the sewer and all that, to oversee that. I don't see it going away, but maybe a better governance structure for the utilities.
One thing I would suggest, Indie Energy did a hearing where they had folks from Springfield on. It was just a Zoom. And they talked about how they did it. It gave me a really good idea of how you have someone doing the day-to-day governance. The council's still involved on some larger items. But that way the council's not dealing with every little thing.
So we'll give him a lot of homework. Okay, anything else from anybody? Appreciate those that were here. I'm really glad to see we have a new member on. It'd be nice if someday we can get the next person on, so we have the team together, but we'll see if we can get the band back together. But if there's nothing else, then we'll stand adjourned at 3:20. And the next meeting will be November 21st, according to the little scratch out here. Yeah, we'll work out details if it's gonna be here and then we go to Geehaw, or how we're gonna do that.
I would highly recommend it be here, because there's not even internet at Geehaw.
We'll be here and then we'll break off to do tour.
I will not be here.
Okay.
I'll be in South Carolina.
Oh, okay, nice.
Or rub it in.